You don't need to block him out of anger. You need to delete his access out of clarity. Because every time you let someone who confuses you, drains you, or disrespects you stay connected to your life, you're trading your peace for chaos. It's not about playing games or trying to make him chase you. It's about finally realizing that not everyone deserves access to your heart, your energy, or your attention. Some people only come back to check if they still have the power to disturb your peace. And the truth is, they only can if you let them. So when you delete his access, you're not being cold, you're being calm, you're saying, my peace matters more than your presence, and that's where your real power begins. Access is one of the most underrated forms of power we give away. We think love is about being endlessly available, endlessly forgiving, endlessly patient. But every time you allow someone to keep access to you after they've disrespected you, ignored your needs, or taken you for granted, you teach them that their behavior doesn't have consequences. You tell them without saying a word that they can disappear and come back, and you'll still be there waiting. That's not love, that's self-abandonment, because access to you is not a right, it's a privilege that has to be earned and respected. When someone shows you they can't handle your heart with care, they're showing you they're not ready for the kind of connection you're offering. But most of us ignore that. We make excuses. We think, maybe if I'm just more understanding, they'll see my worth. But here's the truth. People value what they have to work for. When you're always available, always answering, always forgiving, you make it too easy for them to take you for granted. When you delete their access, you're not being mean, you're restoring balance. You're reminding them that your time, energy, and emotions are sacred, and not everyone gets a front row seat to them. Deleting someone's access doesn't always mean blocking them or cutting them off completely. Sometimes it just means no longer responding immediately to their messages. It means no longer letting them back into your emotional space every time they show up with half-hearted effort. It's choosing to create distance between their chaos and your calm, because your peace cannot coexist with their inconsistency. If someone's presence brings you more confusion than clarity, that's your sign that they shouldn't have access to you anymore. We often fear that by pulling away, we'll lose them for good. But the truth is, if deleting their access makes them disappear, they were never really invested in you. They were invested in your availability. The ones who truly care will meet you at the level of respect you demand. They'll rise to meet your boundaries, not resist them. The ones who only wanted to keep you as an option will fade away the moment you stop being convenient. And as painful as that may feel, it's actually the beginning of peace, because the absence of someone who disturbs your peace is never a loss. It's a blessing in disguise. Giving someone access to you is like handing them a key. You trust that they'll use it with care, that they'll knock before entering, that they'll respect your space. But if they keep barging in whenever they please, leaving emotional messes behind, you eventually have to take the key back. Not because you're bitter, but because you're wise. Protecting your peace is not selfish, it's self-preserving. It's the quiet realization that your emotional well-being matters more than someone's temporary attention. When you finally understand that access is a privilege, everything changes. You stop explaining yourself to people who don't listen. You stop chasing people who never stay. You stop letting people use your kindness as an open door. Instead, you start asking yourself, what has this person done to deserve a place in my peace? And that question alone shifts your energy. You begin to move with intention. You no longer hand out emotional access to anyone who shows interest. You reserve it for those who show consistency. And that's when you start to notice something beautiful. The moment you delete the wrong people's access, your peace expands. You feel lighter, you think clearer, you attract better, because your energy is no longer being drained by people who were never meant to hold it. You realize that protecting your peace isn't about shutting people out, it's about letting the right people in. The ones who respect your boundaries, honor your presence, and treat your access like the privilege it truly is. Boundaries aren't walls, they're filters. They don't shut people out, they keep your peace in. When you decide to delete someone's access, it's not because you're trying to prove a point or punish them. It's because you're tired of letting them disrupt your emotional balance. Healing isn't just about forgiving the past, it's about protecting your present, and boundaries are the way you do that. They are the quiet declaration that says, I love myself enough to stop letting what hurts me stay close. For too long, many of us confuse love with tolerance. We think being understanding means being endlessly available, but understanding without limits turns into self-neglect. Every time you answer a message from someone who's already shown they don't value you, you chip away at your own self-respect. Every time you let them back in without real change, you tell them their inconsistency is acceptable. And the truth is, it's not. You can't heal in the same environment that broke you. So creating boundaries isn't cold, it's clarity. It's saying, I know what drains me, and I choose peace instead. When you start setting boundaries, the people who benefited from your lack of them will be the first to call you difficult. They'll say you've changed, and you have, because healing changes your standards, it shifts your energy. It teaches you that your time, attention, and emotions are sacred resources, not free trials for anyone to waste. The moment you start protecting your peace, you stop needing validation for it. You stop explaining why you're distancing yourself, why you didn't reply, or why you no longer accept bare minimum effort. You begin to live from a place of emotional maturity instead of emotional dependency. The hardest part about boundaries is keeping them when you miss someone. It's easy to be strong when you're angry. It's harder when you're nostalgic, but healing happens in those quiet moments when you want to reach out and don't. When you remind yourself that peace feels better than uncertainty, that consistency feels better than confusion, and that you deserve more than someone who only shows up when it's convenient for them. Boundaries are what stand between who you were, the person who kept forgiving and hoping, and who you're becoming, the person who finally knows their worth. Sometimes the reason you can't move forward isn't because you don't want to, but because you haven't closed the emotional door behind you. You still leave it slightly open, just in case they come back different. But boundaries mean closing that door and trusting that if they were truly meant for you, they wouldn't have walked away in the first place. They wouldn't need to test your limits to understand your value. They'd meet you there willingly, without you having to beg for the bare minimum. The more you practice boundaries, the more you realize how freeing they are. You stop trying to control other people's behavior and focus instead on controlling your access to it. You start to feel calm instead of anxious, grounded instead of reactive. You realize that peace doesn't come from fixing someone else, it comes from protecting yourself. Every time you say no to something that disturbs your energy, you're saying yes to something that restores it. Healing doesn't require revenge or confrontation. It just requires boundaries, the quiet kind, the kind that doesn't need to be announced. The kind where you simply stop showing up for people who don't show up for you, and over time, those boundaries turn into freedom. You start to trust yourself again. You start to feel safe in your own energy again. You start to realize that protecting your peace was never about pushing people away. It was about finally choosing yourself without apology, without guilt, and without explanation. Detachment is often misunderstood. People hear the word and assume it means you've stopped caring or that you've become cold. But true detachment isn't about shutting off your emotions. It's about reclaiming control over them. It's about loving someone deeply while still recognizing that their behavior doesn't define your value. It's understanding that you can care about someone without allowing them to constantly disturb your peace. When you delete someone's access, you're not punishing them. You're protecting yourself from the emotional chaos that comes from attachment without boundaries. The moment you detach, something powerful happens. You stop trying to make someone see your worth. You stop performing, convincing, and chasing closure from someone who was never emotionally equipped to give it. Instead, you begin to turn that same energy inward. You start asking, why am I giving so much to someone who gives so little in return? And that question alone starts your healing. Because detachment forces you to see reality, not the version of it you keep hoping for. It makes you realize that love isn't supposed to be this exhausting or uncertain. It's supposed to bring peace, not confusion. Emotional detachment is an act of self-respect. It's what happens when you finally understand that love shouldn't hurt more than it heals. You begin to detach from the idea that this person is your only source of happiness. You start to detach from the fantasy that if you just try harder, they'll change. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop suffering. It's the gentle but firm decision to say, I can love you from afar, but I won't let your inconsistency keep me stuck. When you first practice detachment, it feels strange, like you're losing something. But what you're really losing is your dependence on their approval, your obsession with their attention, and your habit of confusing effort with love. You're shedding the version of yourself that thought peace was found in being chosen by them. The truth is, detachment isn't distance, it's dignity. It's not bitterness, it's balance. It's not indifference, it's intelligence. You're no longer reacting to every breadcrumb of attention or every wave of silence. You're observing without absorbing. You're aware, but not affected. Sometimes the greatest act of love you can give yourself is to stop fighting for someone who only fights to stay comfortable while you suffer. Detachment gives you back your emotional freedom. It allows you to step out of the emotional roller coaster and finally breathe again. You stop waking up wondering if they'll text, and you start waking up thinking about your peace. You stop replaying every conversation in your head and start focusing on conversations that actually feed your soul. You stop waiting for them to change, and instead, you begin to change how much of yourself you give away to someone who doesn't value it. When you detach, you regain perspective. You see things as they are, not as you wish they were. You stop confusing connection with compatibility. You stop thinking history equals destiny, and that's when real strength shows up, not in your ability to hold on, but in your courage to let go. You start to realize that detachment isn't the end of love, it's the beginning of self-love, it's the bridge between pain and peace. The irony is, when you truly detach, that's often when they notice. That's when they feel your absence, your silence, your energy shifting away from them. But by then, your focus has already changed. You're not waiting for them to return. You're learning how to return to yourself. Because detachment isn't about making someone miss you. It's about making sure you never lose yourself again trying to keep someone else. There's a point where love starts to look like self-betrayal, and that point comes when you keep rewarding inconsistency. You tell yourself you're just being patient, that you're giving them another chance, that maybe this time will be different. But deep down, you know what's really happening. You're teaching them that they can disappear, come back when they feel like it, and still be welcomed like nothing ever happened. You're showing them that your boundaries are flexible, that your heart will always be open, no matter how carelessly they treat it. And that's why deleting their access isn't cruel, it's necessary, because people repeat what you allow. Every time you respond to someone who ghosts you, every time you forgive without seeing any real change, you're rewarding their inconsistency. You're telling them it's okay to treat you like an option because you'll always be there when their other distractions fade. But the truth is, love doesn't grow in inconsistency, it dies there. No relationship can survive when one person keeps showing up halfway while the other keeps giving everything. When you delete their access, you stop giving them the luxury of your availability without the responsibility of your respect. We often hold on to inconsistent people because of potential. We think, I've seen their good side, I know they can be better. But potential doesn't build peace. Consistency does. You can't build a relationship on maybe someday. You need someone who shows up every day. Someone who means what they say. Someone who values you enough not to play with your emotions, just to feed their ego. When you delete someone's access, you're saying, I deserve someone who's sure about me, not someone who keeps me guessing. It's hard, though. Because inconsistency doesn't always look like neglect. It often comes wrapped in mixed signals. One day they're warm, the next they're cold. One day they talk about the future. The next they vanish without explanation. It's confusing, it's addictive, and it's emotionally exhausting. But what you have to understand is that confusion is not chemistry, it's chaos. And if you keep mistaking chaos for love, you'll never find peace. The person who truly cares about you will make sure you know where you stand. You won't have to decode their silence or justify their absence. When you finally stop rewarding inconsistency, you take your power back. You stop waiting for them to act right, and you start acting right for yourself. You stop giving second chances to people who keep proving they don't deserve first ones. You stop making excuses for why they can't be consistent, and you start asking why you keep tolerating it. Deleting access is not an act of revenge, it's an act of self-respect. You're not cutting them off because you hate them, you're cutting them off because you've realized your peace can't coexist with their uncertainty. And the beauty of it is, the moment you stop rewarding inconsistency, you start attracting stability. The kind of energy that doesn't play games, the kind of people who don't confuse you. Because when you show the universe that you're no longer available for half love, it stops sending you people who offer it. You begin to operate from a place of calm confidence rather than emotional desperation. You stop begging to be chosen and start choosing yourself. It's not easy to break the cycle. There will be moments when your mind tempts you to reach out, when nostalgia makes you forget how much the inconsistency hurt. But remind yourself, peace is more valuable than temporary attention. Every time you resist the urge to reopen a door that led to confusion, you strengthen your boundaries. You prove to yourself that you can live without mixed signals, that you can thrive without breadcrumbs. And that's when real love will find you, the kind that doesn't make you question your worth, but reflects it back to you every single day. Peace is the real glow up. Not revenge, not making him jealous, not proving a point, just peace. That deep, quiet confidence that comes when you stop letting people's behavior dictate your emotions. Because nothing shines brighter than a person who has mastered their inner calm. When you stop giving energy to drama, to inconsistency, to people who don't deserve a place in your life, you start to glow differently. It's not a surface glow, it's an energy shift, the kind that makes people wonder what changed, even though you're doing nothing but protecting your peace. There's something magnetic about someone who is unbothered, not because they don't feel, but because they've learned what's worth their energy. Protecting your peace doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop over-caring. It's realizing you can love someone and still choose distance. You can want them and still walk away when it's costing you too much of yourself. Peace isn't the absence of emotion, it's the mastery of it. It's saying I can have strong feelings and still not let them control me. That's power, and that power changes everything about how you carry yourself. When you start prioritizing peace, your focus shifts. You stop needing validation from people who never gave it freely. You stop explaining your boundaries to people committed to misunderstanding them. You start spending your time with people who don't drain your energy just to feed their ego. You start saying no to chaos and yes to calm. You stop trying to prove your worth and start protecting your energy. And suddenly, everything starts feeling lighter. Your mind, your heart, your day-to-day life. That's when people start to notice your glow, not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because you finally look free. Peace has a way of transforming you. It softens your edges, clears your thoughts, and strengthens your self-trust. It teaches you that silence can be louder than confrontation. You don't have to fight for closure, chase after answers, or force anyone to see your value. When you're at peace, you realize that walking away quietly says more about your strength than staying to argue your worth ever could. You stop reacting to every provocation because you know peace is too expensive to spend on anything cheap. Protecting your peace also means protecting your focus. You stop obsessing over what they're doing, who they're talking to, or why they changed. You start using that energy to invest in yourself, your goals, your passions, your healing. You begin to fill the space that they used to occupy with things that actually fulfill you. You start reading more, moving more, creating more. You're no longer waiting for a text. You're building a life. That's the kind of glow that can't be faked. It's not just outer confidence, it's inner contentment. When you protect your peace, you attract a different kind of love, because peaceful people recognize other peaceful souls. You stop being drawn to chaos because you've outgrown it. You no longer crave the highs and lows of toxic patterns. You crave steadiness. You want communication, not confusion, effort, not excuses. You realize that real love doesn't feel like a roller coaster. It feels like home. And that's when you know you've truly healed. The irony is, the moment you stop trying to prove how unbothered you are is the moment you actually become unbothered. You no longer need to post about it, talk about it, or justify it. You're just living it. Protecting your peace becomes second nature. You wake up with gratitude, go to sleep without chaos, and move through your day without tension. And people feel that energy. They notice your glow, your calm, your new standard. That's the real glow. Up when peace becomes your new definition of success, and protecting it becomes your daily act of self-love. The moment you walk away, you reclaim control. You stop waiting for someone else to decide how much you're worth, and you start deciding that for yourself. When you delete his access, you're not just cutting off communication. You're cutting off the emotional leash that kept you tied to uncertainty. You're no longer reacting to his timing, his moods, or his half-hearted attention. You're taking back your power to choose what enters your life and what doesn't. That's not weakness, that's strength in its purest form. Control isn't about manipulation, it's about direction. It's about saying, I'm no longer available for what hurts me. You've spent enough time trying to make someone show up, trying to fix what was never broken on your end. When you finally walk away, you realize how much energy you wasted trying to get clarity from someone who thrived on confusing you. But the second you take back control, you stop waiting for closure and start creating your own. You stop wondering why they didn't value you and start asking why you kept giving chances to someone who didn't. That shift changes everything. Walking away is not about not caring. It's about caring about yourself more. It's the moment you recognize that no amount of attention is worth your peace of mind. When you delete someone's access, you're not doing it to make them notice or chase you. You're doing it so you can finally breathe without the weight of their inconsistency. You're creating emotional distance from what drains you. You're choosing clarity over confusion, stability over chaos, and peace over pain. And that's when you realize the most powerful kind of control is the control you have over your focus. Because when you walk away, you stop trying to change what's outside of you. and you start mastering what's inside of you. You stop checking your phone for messages that never come. You stop replaying conversations trying to find meaning that was never there. You stop waiting for someone else to give you the validation you've always deserved to give yourself. You begin to direct your attention to your own growth, your goals, your happiness. You start to see that life feels lighter when it's not centered around someone who only ever gave you fragments of themselves. Taking back control doesn't always feel empowering at first. Sometimes it feels empty because you're used to the chaos. You're used to the constant highs and lows. You're used to chasing the moments of affection that made all the confusion seem worth it. But as time passes, that emptiness transforms into peace. That silence becomes clarity. That distance becomes strength. You begin to feel safe in your own company again. You start to realize that you don't need anyone to validate your worth, because peace itself is proof that you made the right choice. And here's the truth. When you reclaim your power, people notice, not because you're trying to get their attention, but because your energy speaks louder than words. They feel your absence. They sense the calm that replaced the chaos they used to bring. But by the time they come back to test if they still have access, you're no longer the same person who once waited for them. You're not angry, you're just indifferent. You're not seeking revenge, you're at peace. You've taken back your control, and that's something no one can take from you again. Walking away is the ultimate declaration of self-respect. It's not a goodbye out of bitterness, it's a goodbye out of clarity. It's the moment you realize that not everything that once made you happy is meant to stay. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is let go. Because peace isn't found in holding on, it's found in having the strength to let go and never look back. When you walk away and reclaim control, you stop needing closure from them because the closure becomes you. The healed, calm, confident version of yourself who finally understands what it means to protect your peace at all costs. When you delete his access, you're not erasing him. You're reclaiming yourself. You're reminding your heart that peace is not a prize someone else gives you. It's a boundary you create for yourself. You're teaching your soul that love should never come at the cost of your sanity, your confidence, or your self-worth. Because the truth is, the moment you protect your peace, you step into a new kind of power, the kind that doesn't chase, doesn't beg, and doesn't break for anyone who can't match your energy. You don't need to prove that you've moved on. Your silence will do that for you. You don't need to make him regret losing you. Your growth will handle that on its own. The glow up isn't about who notices, it's about how peaceful you feel when no one's validation matters anymore. You start to see that protecting your peace isn't the end of love, it's the beginning of self-respect. It's the shift from hoping someone will give you peace to realizing you were capable of creating it all along. So, delete his access, delete his power over your emotions, delete the version of you that settled for less just to feel seen. And watch what happens next. Watch how light you feel, watch how calm your days become, watch how your confidence starts to rebuild from the inside out. Because once you choose peace, everything that's not aligned with it naturally fades away, and that's not loss. That's liberation. The kind of liberation that says, I am no longer available for anything that costs me my peace.